when I developed rationality, when I stopped being 11 and started looking at everything with reasons behind them, started searching for the reasons behind them, is that the time when I lost my childhood? When did my childhood go? Was it the time I realized my mind was actually mine? I can operate it by myself, I can think by myself. Although the poet is lamenting over the loss of his childhood, he is feeling sad about the fact that, and also wants to find out where and when his childhood got lost. Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you to your prep school English classes. I am your English teacher, Kshama. Today in this session, we are going to learn a very cute, a very special poem named Childhood from your textbook Hornbill, which is the third poem written by Marcus Nettin. Okay? Now in this session, we are going to learn about the poet, summary of the poem, the line-by-line analysis, and what are the poetic devices that are employed in this poem and what impact do they have on us. Before we begin, the first step is to understand about the poet. And without wasting any time, let's jump right in and understand a couple of questions over here. Let's try answering a couple of questions. The first question is, how do you feel when kids of, this generation, the upcoming generation are, labeled as, acting more like adults? Do they really act like adults or are they really matured enough? Why are they labeled as such? And is awareness the end of childhood? When you're becoming more and more aware, is it that you're losing the childlikeness in you? Are you losing the innocence with it? I'm asking you a lot of complex questions for today's session. And how does it feel for you to be young adults? Now you are said that you are too old to take, too young to make some decisions or choices. At the same time, you're old enough to take a couple of responsibilities. Now, is it confusing? Is it all sorted? How does the state of being at a young adult or being a young adult make you feel like? All of these are the questions about what you go through on a day-to-day basis, okay? The labeling of people about children as young adults, or you being in a state of, this fickleness where you're not a youngster or not fully adult. That's a state of confusion, right? But whatever the confusion is, whatever you want to do out of your life, at the end of the day is still your choice. On that note, we'll start understanding about the poet for today, which is Marcus Nettin. Not much is known about Marcus Nettin. Okay, he is a Norwegian poet. He writes very profound poems with a lot of in-depth meaning in them. And then the very famous poem of this poet over here is The Childhood, which he wrote when he was 12 years old. And it was originally written in his own language, in his native language, but then was translated into English. Not much is known about Marcus Nettin. He is a very famous Norwegian poet. He wrote profound poems with a lot of in-depth meaning in them, a lot of weightage in them. And then Childhood is one of the most famous poems from this writer, which was originally written in his native tongue when he was 12 years old, only 12. Okay, afterwards it was translated to English. Now, whose childhood are we talking about? The name of the poem, Childhood, what is it talking about? Is it the poet's childhood? Is it your childhood, my childhood? Whose childhood is it? Let's find out. Okay, moving on to the first stanza of this poem. Let me read it to you. When did my childhood go? When did it go? Was it the day I ceased to be 11? Was it the time I realized that hell and heaven could not be found in geography and therefore could not be? Was that the day? Now over here, there are a lot of questions. The poem starts with the big question. When did my childhood go? Have you also asked yourself this question, or have you heard any elders, your parents, your uncles, grandparents asking, we didn't realize how time went by? So have you asked yourself this question? When did my childhood go? Childhood is one of the sweetest, most memorable stages of any human's life, or be it even animals. When they are, in the early stages of their life, when they are in the baby forms, how cute they are. Everything seems very innocent, right? But when did it go? When did it pass? Is the first question that the poet is posing. He's thinking about it, retrospecting, looking back. Was it the day I ceased to be 11? Was it the day I stopped being 11 and I was no more 11? I grew. Was it after I, turned 12, 13, 14, like that? The age is what made me cross my childhood? Was it the time I realized that hell and heaven Okay, these are amongst the complex concepts which kids at that age will not understand. But over here, what our poet says, again over here you can see the consonant letters H and H have been repeated twice. So it is alliteration. Yes, wonderful. And was it the time, he's questioning again, was it the time I realized that hell and heaven could not be found in geography? They cannot be found in geography. Meaning, what is the poet trying to say here? Is it the time I developed awareness, started thinking about everything with the perspective of rationality? Now, hell and heaven cannot be found in the textbook of geography like I can find Europe, like I can find India. Hell and heaven could not be found in my geography textbooks. And therefore, whatever that does not have proof, you won't believe it. That is the basic or foundation of rationality, right? Rationality is nothing but reasoning. Now, this stanza over here talks about how maybe when I lost my childhood, or when did it go? When I developed rationality, when I stopped being 11 and started looking at everything with reasons behind them, started searching for the reasons behind them, is that the time when I lost my childhood? And therefore, they could not be, since they cannot be found in the textbooks, they cannot exist. Isn't that as clear as that? Was that the day? He's asking again. Okay, over here, if we look at the rhyme scheme of the poem, A, over here it is changed, so B, 11 and heaven, B again, and then geography, C, and therefore could not be, same sound. Over here it has changed, D. Okay, so A, B, B, C, C, D is the rhyme scheme. Why did I name it so? A, go, sound O is coming. Then 11 and heaven, similar, so we'll keep it B. Then we have geography, B, which is C, C, E, the sound E is coming up. But over here, day, A sound, so it changes again. So it is A, B, B, C, C, D. Following stanzas in this poem do not have a particular rhyme scheme. Only this stanza over here has the rhyme scheme. What is it talking about? This poem over here is talking about how I might have lost my childhood when I developed rationality. When I started looking at things, the reasons, I started to find out reasons behind them. Is that the time I lost my childhood? That's what the poet is asking y'all. Now, rationality, is it the end of the childhood? First stanza, remember it, etch it in your memory, keep it very safe. Seized, the word seized means when I stopped being 11 and I grew after that, is it the time where I lost my childhood? Then, reasoning questioned the belief systems. Hell and heaven are the belief systems, and reasons, when you seek answers to the reasons that you want, when you seek answers to the questions that you have in your head, that is where you're questioning the belief system and you're no more a child. Is that the way? Then, there is a refrain that has been used over here. When did my childhood go? So this, was that the day? You see that it has been repeated. The question has been repeated throughout the poem. You see that the question is repeated multiple times. So to give you an example, there's a poem by Robert Frost named as Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. And there as well, he says, I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. This line over here is repeated twice. Similarly, when did my childhood go will be repeated in this poem, throughout this poem, multiple times. That is an example for the poetic device, refrain. Next up, antithesis. Antithesis is putting together of two opposite ideas. Hell and heaven are two opposite, completely opposite ideas, just like love and hate. Remember, white and black, these two are opposite ideas put together. That is the poetic device, antithesis. And then there is alliteration, which is hell and heaven. Later we have that, the, day. The consonant sound, the, T, has been repeated twice. Moving forward, when did my childhood go? He's asking the question again, refrain. Keep it in your mind. When did my childhood go? Was it the time I realized that adults were not all they seemed to be? They talked of love and preached of love, but did not act so lovingly. Was that the day? Very simple. He is calling out all the adults for the hypocrites that they are, okay? The hypocrisy of the adults is what this stanza is talking about in a nutshell. He's asking again, when did my childhood go? Let's ask that question again and find out more reasons. Was it the time I realized that these adults who talk about love and who preach love all the time, be gentle to him, play with him nicely, don't, fight with her. They preach all the love and they, talk about love all the time. They talked and preached of love all the time. When it came to them or when it was their turn, they did not act so lovingly. They were found to be fighting with each other and not being kind to each other. So they are being hypocrites over here. Was that the day when I realized that these adults are not really loving or not doing whatever that they are preaching? Love for that matter, okay? They are not being so lovely, so kind and so nice to others, but they are asking us to be. Was it the time when I realized, when I was able to see through this hypocrisy of adults, that I grew up, that I lost my childhood? Was that the day? He asks again, when I was able to see through the hypocrisy of adults, did I lose my childhood? Then, this broken trust. When the children have a lot of faith in adults, they believe whatever the adults are telling them. You do this, you don't do this, you don't have to do this, this is wrong, this is right. Children look at you as a model, as a role model, right? But when you are acting differently than what you are preaching, there is a trust that is broken. And that is the first step towards adulthood. When the kids realize that when the adults are not doing what they are preaching, why should I? That's where the trust is broken. That's where the mutual respect is broken. So was it the first step towards adulthood and losing my childhood? Then they did not, whatever they taught or appeared to be, they were not really kind like that. Okay? Whatever they behaved, whatever they preached, it was not true. There is enjambment you see in this entire poem. So in this entire poem, you will see the full stop only at the end of the poem. So throughout the poem, it has been continued with, although it has been punctuated with commas and question marks throughout the poem, there is no full stop. So you will find a lot of lines that could be an example for enjambment. What have I told you about enjambment? Enjambment is a poetic device which is used where an entire line or an entire stanza is written in one line, or 2 or 3 lines make up to one whole line. How do we get to know that? Because the full stop is used at the end of 2 lines or 3 lines, or at the end of an entire poem for that matter. In this poem, you will find the full stop at the end of the poem. Okay, that's one example for enjambment. So poetic devices such as refrain, alliteration, enjambment have been used in this particular poem. Moving forward, when did my childhood go? For the 3rd time, the poet is asking again and trying to find more reasons. When did my childhood go? Refrain. Was it when I found my mind was really mine? Alliteration could be seen over here. My mind was really mine. The consonant sound M has been repeated thrice. When did my childhood go? Was it the time I realized my mind was actually mine? I can operate it by myself. I can think by myself. Wow. To use whichever way I choose. Producing thoughts that were not those of other people, but my own and mine alone. Was that the day? Now in the 3rd stanza, he's talking about, was it the day I realized that my mind is my own? Is it the time when he discovered his sense of individuality? Is that the day when he found out that he can make his own decisions, he can have his own thoughts and ideas? Is that the day when I ceased to be a child and I was an adult? When I realized that I don't have to think or accept other people's ideologies or thoughts. I can have my own thought. I can, generate ideas, use my own ideas. And is it the time when I realized my ideas are also appreciated, also valued? Is that the time when I discovered my individuality? I lost my childhood? Okay. When you are a child, you are, asked to do a lot of things. Your elders tell you what to do. Your parents tell you what not to do. All of this, right? But as you grow up, you start taking autonomy over your life, taking control of your life. There are certain things that you like, certain things that you don't like. You want to eat this, you want to go there. You don't like this color, you don't like this character. There's a lot of things, right? You have your own choices. You have your own mind, thought, and ideas. Is that the time when you lost your childhood? Was it the time? When did my childhood go? Was it the time I realized my mind was my own and I can use it whichever way I want to do it? And I don't have to listen to other people all the time and do whatever they want me to do? Is that the day when I lost my childhood, my mind, was mine. Alliteration, consonant sound M has been repeated a couple of times over here, and it's causing beautiful effect over in this stanza. Moving forward, this freedom of thought, freedom of individuality, the autonomy over one's mind. Was it the time did the poet lose his childhood? He is unique, he is independent, he can have his own thoughts, which is different or separated from other people's thoughts. It is detached from other people's views. Alliteration, my mind, whichever way is also an alliteration. W, the consonant sound verb, whichever way, has been repeated twice. Then there is also enjambment. Okay, moving forward, where did my childhood go? It went to some forgotten place that is hidden in an infant's face. That's all I know. In the last stanza, after getting a lot of questioning and then getting a lot of reasons, first up he questioned, when did my childhood go? And got an answer. Maybe it was the time where I developed rationality, reasoning everything. Secondly, when he asked the question, when did my childhood go again? It might be the time when he started seeing through the hypocrisy, calling out the hypocrisy of adults. Third time when he asked, when did my childhood go again, please? It is maybe when you realize that you have a sense of individuality. You are your own master. Maybe that is the time when you lost your childhood and entered adulthood. But then in the end, this is the phase of acceptance, a phase of conclusion that the poet reaches and says, where did my childhood go? Where did it go? It went to some forgotten place. Now, whatever that has happened in the childhood, it has become a sweet memory and it cannot be, lived back. It cannot be revived again, traced back again. It went to some forgotten place. With all this, with rationality and calling out the hypocrisy and finally developing a sense of individuality, he has, stopped being a child. It has gone to a forgotten place that is hidden in an infant's face. Only an infant or a small baby would lack a sense of awareness, about rationality. It will have a sense of awareness, but about reasoning, giving why something is happening, or calling out for kids, if you laugh at them, they'll laugh at you. If you mock or if you're acting like you're crying, they'll definitely cry. So they will believe whatever that you are telling them. They will not be able to call out through your hypocrisy, or they will not know that they can use their own mind and think whatever they want to think. So all of this will not be there within an infant. So your childhood has moved to a forgotten place. It cannot be revived back or traced back. But where can it be found? It can be found in a sweet, innocent child's face, who still has that innocence, who still has that, doesn't want any reasons, trusts the elders or the adults completely, and doesn't have any time but playing in using his or her own mind into something and producing thoughts, right? So that's all I know. That's the conclusion, or that's the state of acceptance the poet reaches to. Going forward, it is a phase of realization and acceptance. After asking a lot of questions, these are the conclusions that the poet has simply gotten. Neither easy to remember nor easy to retrieve. He cannot go back. You can't remember most of the things that you have done as a child, right? So it has gone to a forgotten place. It is filled with innocence. Infant's face or the stage of infancy is filled with a lot of innocence. Then there is refrain again. Where did my childhood go? When did my childhood go? Let's have a quick recap about this poem. Over here, the poet is continuously questioning he's lamenting over the loss of his childhood. He wants to figure out by asking a couple of questions. Where did it go? Was this the day? Was this the stage where I lost it? When did I stop being a child? The poet wants the question about that. Poet wants an answer to that question. Now adolescence is a period of a lot of stress and strain where you're figuring out to be an adult, or you are still figuring out whether I am a fully grown adult, whether I am still young. This young adult phase that we talked about, it's very confusing. So the poet is realizing, so now I've stopped being 11. So am I old now? Am I responsible enough to take my own decisions now, or am I still a kid? So this is a phase of a lot of stress and strain as widely accepted. Then in stanza 1, we talk about is rationality. The development of rationality is where I lost my childhood. Second stanza, we talk about is the hypocrisy, is the ability to call out the hypocrisy, to see through the hypocrisy of another person or adults for that matter? Is that the phase where you lost your childhood? Stanza 3 talks about how when you have a sense of individuality, when you are your own master, is that the time where you lose your childhood or childlikeness and start being an adult? And in stanza 4, there is realization and acceptance. Childhood has anyway moved to a forgotten place, and whenever I look at an infant or a child is only when I can see that innocence that is there, which is absence of all of this rationality, to be able to see through the hypocrisy or sense of individuality. Only in a sweet infant's face I can find the childhood that all of us have lost. There is no particular rhyme scheme in the following stanzas, following 3 stanzas, but in the first stanza we have A, B, B, C, C and D. Then, although the poet is lamenting over the loss of his childhood, he is feeling sad about the fact that, and also wants to find out where and when his childhood got lost. There is also space for the future days to come. He brings himself to agree to a fact that this is all I know, that it has gone to a forgotten place and I've gotten a couple of answers for myself. And let's move forward. It is true that every man has a child in him that really wants to play. No matter how much you think, or the poet Marcus Netton thinks that childhood has gone to a forgotten place and it cannot be revived back, I believe that in every man or every human being for that matter, there still exists a child. You know, there are times when you have seen your adults who also want to play, who also want to like chill and waste their time sometimes, who also want to go to places, see places. You still see that innocence in them. It is true that our poet tells us that innocence, maybe it can only be found in an infant's face. You tell me, do you really agree with Marcus Netton, or do you want to write a poem named Adulthood and talk about how you cannot decide whether, are you a fully adult or have you lost your childhood? You can write your own poem, okay? This is just one inspiration or one leaf from the entire huge tree. So on that note, I'll see you all in the next class. I hope you enjoyed this poem and also concentrated and noted down all the poetic devices that are there in this poem. And there were not many difficult words in this poem for me to pick it out and tell you. But the poet has very neatly, very precisely talked about the loss of childhood and the reasons about it. He has beautifully talked about one reason at a time in one stanza. And it is very clear, very short, very sweet. I hope you enjoyed this session. I'll see you all in the next class. Until then, see you. Take care.